Kefver sat in the cold metal chair, his forearms bound in energy restraints that hummed softly in the silent courtroom. The tribunal judges stared down at him from their elevated platform, their faces hidden behind ceremonial masks. 3 years had passed since the failed invasion of the human world called Earth. 3 years since everything the Zelthian Empire believed about warfare had been torn apart. The lead judge spoke in the ancient formal tongue. Commander Kefver of the 7th Assault Legion, you have remained silent about your experiences during the Earth campaign. Today, you will speak. Tell us what happened. Kefver's mandibles clicked nervously. He had been dreading this moment, but he knew the time had come. The Empire needed to understand why their greatest military force had been defeated by a species they had dismissed as primitive. It began with the briefing, Kefver said, his voice carrying across the quiet chamber. General Vexthul called all unit commanders to the flagship 3 days before the invasion. I remember walking into that vast briefing room, seeing hundreds of my fellow officers. We were all confident we had conquered 47 worlds. Earth would be number 48. The memories came flooding back. Kefver could see it all again as clearly as if it were happening now. General Vexthul had stood before the massive holographic display showing the blue and green planet. His scales gleamed under the bright lights as he gestured toward the image. With his ceremonial staff, "Brothers in conquest," the general had announced, "behold our next prize. The humans call it Earth. Our intelligence division has spent 2 cycles studying this world and its inhabitants." The display changed to show various images of humans going about their daily lives. They looked soft and weak compared to the armored Zelthian warriors. Kefver remembered thinking how small they appeared. "The species calls itself Homo sapiens," General Vexthul continued. "They are bipedal mammals with limited physical capabilities. No natural armor, no claws, no enhanced strength. They use primitive kinetic weapons and basic chemical explosives. Their military organization is fractured into competing nation-states that often fight among themselves." Murmurs of amusement rippled through the assembled commanders. Several officers made jokes about how quickly the campaign would end. "Their technology is roughly equivalent to our ancestors from 800 cycles ago," the general added. "They have achieved basic spaceflight, but have barely established permanent settlements beyond their home world. Most importantly, they have never faced an external threat to their entire species. They know nothing of true warfare." Intelligence officer Zarthek stepped forward with detailed reports. "The humans divide themselves by artificial concepts they call nations. These nations maintain separate military forces that rarely coordinate effectively. Their largest military organizations number only a few million soldiers each. The entire species has fewer warriors than a single Zelthian battle fleet." Kefver raised one of his hands. "What about their weapons technology? Primitive at best," Zarthik replied dismissively. "They still use chemical propellants to fire metal projectiles. Their most powerful explosives are crude fission devices that would barely scratch our ship hulls. They have no energy weapons, no quantum barriers, no molecular disruptors. A single Zelthian warrior in full combat armor could defeat dozens of their soldiers." The briefing continued with tactical assessments. The humans had no unified command structure. Their communication systems were easily disrupted. Their supply lines were vulnerable. Most of their population consisted of non-combatants who would likely surrender immediately when faced with superior force. "The operation will proceed in 3 phases, General Vexthul explained as the display showed fleet positions. "Phase 1 involves orbital bombardment of major population centers to demonstrate our superiority. Phase 2 will be the deployment of ground forces to secure strategic locations. Phase 3 will be the establishment of administrative control over the remaining population." Commander Hektar from the 5th Legion stood up. "General, how long do we estimate this campaign will last?" Intelligence projects complete victory within 30 days, came the confident reply. Possibly less if the humans prove as cooperative. As expected. Kethver remembered feeling a strange unease during that briefing, though he could not explain why at the time. Something about the intelligence reports seemed too neat, too simple. In all their previous conquests, there had always been surprises, unexpected resistance, tactical challenges. But the briefing made the humans sound like they would simply give up without a real fight. Are we certain about these assessments? Kethver had asked. In my experience, desperate species can be unpredictable. General Vexthel's eyes had narrowed. Commander Kethver, are you questioning our intelligence division? We have monitored their communications, studied their military exercises, analyzed their historical conflicts. The humans are exactly what they appear to be. Soft, divided, and technologically backward. After the briefing, Kethver returned to his ship to prepare his troops. The 7th Assault Legion consisted of 12,000 elite warriors, each trained from birth for conquest. They had never known defeat. Their weapons could level mountains. Their armor could withstand the heat of plasma fire. They were the finest soldiers the Zelthian Empire had ever produced. In the days leading up to the invasion, Kethver reviewed the intelligence files on human military capabilities. The reports showed armies that moved slowly, communicated through vulnerable networks, and relied on outdated equipment. Their soldiers appeared to lack the discipline and unity that made Zelthian forces so effective. The night before the invasion, Kethver stood in his command chamber looking out at the stars. His aide, Sub-Commander Veltok, approached with the final deployment orders. Sir, the fleet is in position. All legions report ready for assault. The humans show no signs of awareness regarding our presence. Have they detected our scout ships? Kethver asked. No, sir. Their sensor technology is too primitive. We have been observing their major cities for days without any response. They continue their normal activities as if nothing is happening. Kethver nodded, but the feeling of unease remained. Something felt wrong about the situation, though he could not identify what it was. On the morning of the invasion, the Zelthian fleet moved into position above Earth. Kethver watched from his command deck as thousands of ships arranged themselves in perfect formation. It was a magnificent sight that had brought terror to dozens of worlds. Sir, his communications officer reported, we are receiving scattered transmissions from the planet's surface. The humans appear to be trying to contact us. What are they saying? Standard surrender negotiations, sir. They want to establish diplomatic contact. General Vexthel's voice came through the fleet command channel. All units, ignore human communication. Attempts, we proceed according to plan. Begin Phase 1 operations. The first orbital bombardments lit up the planet's surface like tiny stars. The targets were carefully chosen to demonstrate Zelthian power without completely destroying human infrastructure. Military bases, government buildings, communication centers. Each strike was precise and devastating. Kethver expected panic, chaos, immediate surrender. Instead, the humans did something unexpected. They went quiet. Sir, his sensor operator called out, human military communications have ceased completely. Surrender transmissions? No, sir. No transmissions at all. They have gone completely silent. In the tribunal chamber, Kethver paused in his testimony. The judges leaned forward, waiting for him to continue. That silence should have been our first warning, he said quietly. We thought it meant they were too frightened to respond. We were wrong. The humans were not paralyzed by fear. They were preparing. Kethver shifted in his restraints, his memories pulling him back to those first terrible hours when everything began to go wrong. The tribunal waited in silence as he gathered his thoughts. The landing began exactly as planned, he continued. My legion was assigned to secure the coastal region the humans called California. Intelligence had identified it as strategically important but lightly defended. We expected minimal resistance. The first wave of dropships had descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. Kethver remembered standing in the command pod of his assault craft, watching the alien landscape grow larger below them. Rolling hills covered in strange vegetation, cities that sprawled across the terrain in patterns unlike anything he had seen before. The initial landings were unopposed, Kethver told the judges. We established perimeter zones around 3 major population centers. For the first 6 hours, we encountered no organized resistance. A few scattered groups of humans fled when they saw our forces, exactly as intelligence had predicted. But even in those early hours, small details had troubled him. The humans who fled did not panic the way conquered populations usually did. They moved with purpose, taking specific items with them, destroying certain equipment before they left. It seemed too organized for random panic. Kethver's first real encounter with human military forces came near a place called Monterey Bay. His advanced scouts had reported a human military installation along the coast. According to their intelligence, it should have been abandoned or surrendered by now. I led a reconnaissance force of 200 warriors to investigate. Kethver continued his testimony. The facility appeared empty from our aerial scans. We approached in standard formation, expecting to find either deserted buildings or perhaps a small group of humans waiting to surrender. The memory was burned into his mind. They had advanced across open ground toward the human base, their heavy armor gleaming in the alien sun. Kethver had been confident, even casual about the mission. His warriors joked among themselves about how easy this conquest was proving to be. Then the ground exploded beneath them. The humans had buried explosive devices throughout the approach. Roots, Kethver explained. But these were not the primitive chemical explosives our intelligence had described. They were sophisticated weapons that seemed designed specifically to penetrate Zelthian armor. The first blast had thrown 3 of his warriors into the air. Kethver watched in shock as their supposedly impenetrable battlesuits cracked and sparked. Before he could process what was happening, more explosions erupted around them. "Take cover!" he had shouted, but there was nowhere to hide on the open ground. His force scattered, trying to reach the safety of nearby rocks and trees. That was when the human soldiers appeared. They emerged from concealed positions that his scanners had completely missed. Underground bunkers, camouflage trenches, hidden tunnels. Within seconds, his reconnaissance force was surrounded by enemies they had not even known were there. The humans did not fight like any species we had encountered before, Kethver told. The tribunal. They moved in small groups, constantly changing position. When we targeted one group, 2 others would attack us from different angles. They seemed to communicate without using detectable technology. Colonel Dan Parker had been the human commander that day, though Kethver would not learn his name until much later. Through his battlesuit sensors, he could see the human clearly. Parker was smaller than any Zelthian warrior, wearing armor that looked fragile compared to their power suits. Yet he directed his forces with precision that impressed even Kethver. The human weapons were another shock. Intelligence had said they used primitive kinetic projectiles that would barely scratch Zelthian armor. Instead, the humans fired rounds that somehow found weak points in their battlesuits. Joints, sensor arrays, power connections. It was as if they knew exactly where to aim. Sergeant Lisa Grant was their demolitions expert, Kethver said, remembering the human female who had caused so much damage. She seemed to appear everywhere at once, placing explosive charges on our equipment, our heavy weapons platforms, our communication arrays, our supply containers, everything we needed to maintain our advantage. The battle lasted for 4 hours. What should have been a simple sweep of an abandoned facility became a desperate fight for survival. Kethver, 200 warriors found themselves pinned down by fewer than 50 humans. I called for air support, he continued. Major Alex Stone commanded their air defense systems. When our attack craft arrived, they were met by human aircraft that should not have existed according to our intelligence reports. The human planes were fast and agile, using tactics that confused Zelthian pilots trained for traditional aerial combat. They would appear suddenly, strike hard, then disappear into terrain features before Zelthian weapons could lock onto them. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to coordinate perfectly with the ground forces. Kethver watched one of his gunships explode in midair, brought down by a weapon that appeared to be fired from multiple positions simultaneously. The humans had somehow linked their systems to create a coordinated defense network. We began to retreat, Kethver admitted to the tribunal. It was the first time in my career that I had ordered a withdrawal from an inferior force. But these humans were not fighting like an inferior force. The retreat should have been orderly. Zelthian forces were trained to withdraw in stages, covering each other while maintaining defensive formations. But the humans refused to let them go. They pursued the withdrawing Zelthians with relentless efficiency. Small groups of human soldiers seemed to know exactly where Kethver's forces would go, setting up ambushes along every retreat route. They used the terrain to their advantage in ways that amazed him. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez led one of their pursuit teams, Kethver said. She was young, probably no older than a Zelthian cadet, yet she commanded her soldiers with skill that rivaled veteran officers. Her team alone accounted for the destruction of 6 of our armored vehicles. What troubled Kethver most was how the humans fought together. Zelthian warriors were disciplined and obedient, following orders without question. But these humans seemed to think independently while still working as a perfect unit. When one soldier was wounded, others immediately moved to help without being commanded. When equipment failed, they adapted instantly using whatever was available. They treated their wounded with desperate urgency, he told the judges. I watched human soldiers risk their lives to rescue fallen comrades, even when it put them in obvious danger. This behavior made no tactical sense, yet it seemed to make them fight harder. By the end of that first engagement, Kethver had lost 43 warriors. The humans had casualties too, but far fewer than expected. More importantly, they had accomplished something no other species had ever done. They had forced a Zelthian legion to retreat. I reported the engagement to General Vexthal, Kethver continued. I explained that human military capabilities had been severely underestimated. Their weapons, tactics, and coordination were far more advanced than intelligence had indicated. The general's response had been predictable. He accused Kethver of making excuses for poor performance. The humans had simply gotten lucky, he said. They had used terrain advantages and surprise, nothing more. The next engagement would prove their weakness, but reports were coming in from other landing zones. Similar stories of unexpected resistance, advanced tactics, and human forces that refused to follow predicted patterns. The 3rd Legion had encountered humans who seemed to vanish and reappear like ghosts. The 9th Legion reported weapons that appeared to adapt during battle, becoming more effective the longer the fighting continued. That night, I studied every detail of the engagement, Kethver told the tribunal. I analyzed sensor recordings, communication intercepts, tactical patterns. I began to understand that we were not fighting the species described in our intelligence reports. The humans were learning. Every encounter with Zelthian forces taught them something new. They shared information instantly across vast distances, adapting their tactics in real time. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to be studying Zelthian technology and developing countermeasures. I realized that our greatest advantage was disappearing, Kethver said quietly. The element of surprise was gone. The humans knew what we could do, and they were preparing for it. In the tribunal chamber, one of the judges leaned forward. Commander, at what point did you understand the true nature of the threat? Kethver. Mandibles clicked softly. After that first battle, I knew we were in trouble, but I did not yet understand how much trouble. The humans had shown us only the beginning of their capabilities. Kethver's voice grew heavier as he continued his testimony. The memories of what came next still haunted his dreams, even 3 years later. After the coastal engagements, High Command decided we needed to capture a major population center to break human morale, he told the tribunal. They chose the city the humans called New Seattle. Intelligence estimated 2 million inhabitants, mostly civilians. It should have fallen within days. The order had come directly from General Vexthiel. The Zelthian Empire would demonstrate its power by taking complete control of a human city. Once the population saw their military defeated and their leaders captured, other cities would surrender without fighting. Kethver had been assigned to lead the assault on the northern districts. His legion, reinforced after the coastal losses, numbered 8,000 warriors. They faced an estimated human defense force of fewer than 300 regular soldiers. Commander Rick Hayes led the city's defense, Kethver said. Our intelligence files showed he was a career officer with limited combat experience. We expected him to evacuate or surrender when faced with impossible odds. Instead, Hayes had done something unprecedented. He had turned every civilian in the city into a potential combatant. The siege began on the 7th day of the invasion. Zelthian forces surrounded New Seattle from all directions, cutting off escape routes and supply lines. The plan was simple: advance steadily through the urban areas, securing each district methodically until the humans had nowhere left to run. The first indication that something was wrong came when we entered the outer suburbs, Kethver continued. The residential areas appeared empty, but our sensors detected movement everywhere. Heat signatures, electromagnetic activity, mechanical sounds. The humans were still there, but we could not locate them. The suburban neighborhoods had been transformed into elaborate defensive networks. Every house, every building, every piece of infrastructure had been converted into a potential weapon. The humans had used the 3 days since the invasion, began to prepare surprises that no Zelthian tactician had anticipated. Kethver led his first assault column down what had once been a peaceful residential street. The houses looked normal. From the outside, their windows dark and empty. But as his warriors advanced, the neighborhood came alive with hidden threats. They had turned their own homes into weapons, he told the judges. Explosive devices hidden in ordinary objects. Sniper positions in attics and basements. Underground tunnels connecting buildings that allowed defenders to appear behind us without warning. Corporal Nina Brooks had been one of those snipers. From her concealed position in a damaged house, she had eliminated 6 Zelthian warriors before anyone even knew where she was shooting from. Her rifle used ammunition that seemed designed specifically to penetrate their armor at vulnerable points. She was not a professional soldier, Kethver explained. Before the invasion, she worked in what humans call computer programming. Yet, she fought with the skill of a trained marksman. This pattern repeated throughout the city. Civilians who had never held weapons became effective fighters within days. The urban environment neutralized many Zelthian advantages. Their heavy weapons could not be used without destroying the infrastructure they were supposed to capture. Their mobility was limited by narrow streets and buildings that blocked line of sight. Most frustrating of all, their superior technology meant nothing when they could not identify targets. Dr. Kevin Walsh exemplified the transformation Kethver witnessed in human civilians. Before the invasion, Walsh had been a medical doctor with no military training. During the siege, he led a resistance cell that disrupted Zelthian supply lines and rescued wounded defenders. Dr. Walsh organized civilian medical teams that operated throughout the combat zone, Kethver said. They ignored the danger to themselves, moving through active battle areas to treat injured humans. But they also gathered intelligence, coordinated between different resistance groups and provided supplies to fighting units. The siege that should have lasted days stretched into weeks. Every street became a battlefield. Every building had to be cleared room by room. Zelthian forces found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to multiply rather than decrease as casualties mounted. The humans showed behavior I had never encountered in any other species, Kethver told the tribunal. When their positions were overrun, they did not surrender or flee. They regrouped elsewhere and continued fighting. When their leaders were killed, new leaders immediately took their place. Commander Hayes demonstrated this principle perfectly. When Zelthian forces finally located his command center and launched a concentrated assault, they discovered he had already moved to a backup location. The humans had prepared multiple command structures, multiple supply networks, multiple fallback positions. It was like fighting an enemy that could regenerate, Kethver said. Every time we eliminated a threat, two more appeared to replace it. The humans adapted faster than we could respond. The urban warfare took a psychological toll on Zelthian forces that no one had anticipated. They were trained for open battles against conventional enemies, fighting in a city where every shadow might hide a sniper, where every doorway could conceal explosives, where children and elderly humans might be carrying weapons, pushed many warriors to their breaking point. My soldiers began showing signs of combat stress, Kethver admitted. They became jumpy, suspicious, prone to mistakes. The humans seemed to understand this and used it against us. They would create false alarms, phantom threats, psychological pressure that wore down our effectiveness. 3 weeks into the siege, Kethver's legion controlled perhaps half of New Seattle, but that control was meaningless. The humans continued, operating in areas supposedly under Zelthian authority. Supply convoys were attacked. Communication relays were sabotaged. Individual warriors disappeared during patrol duties. The humans had created a 3-dimensional battlefield, he explained to the judges. They used sewers, subway tunnels, building foundations, rooftops, and interior spaces to move around the city without us detecting them. Our map showed controlled territory, but the reality was that we controlled nothing. The breakthrough came when Kethver's forces finally cornered a large group of human civilians in what appeared to be a refugee shelter. Intelligence indicated these were non-combatants who could be captured and used to pressure the resistance forces to surrender. We surrounded the building and demanded surrender, Kethver said. Instead of giving up, the humans inside began broadcasting messages throughout the city. They called for other civilians to escape while they held our attention. What followed challenged everything Kethver thought he understood about warfare. The surrounded humans fought with desperate courage, not to win, but to buy time for others to escape. They used their own lives as weapons, making every room a costly battle that slowed the Zelthian advance. They sacrificed themselves to protect others, he told the tribunal quietly. Not soldiers protecting civilians, not leaders protecting followers. Ordinary people protecting other ordinary people, including strangers they had never met. The shelter battle lasted for 8 hours. When it finally ended, 43 humans were dead and over 200 had escaped. But the cost to Zelthian forces was devastating. 18 warriors killed, dozens more wounded, and massive equipment losses from improvised explosive devices. That night, I received reports from other Legion commanders, Kethver continued. Similar stories from every district. Civilians who fought like professional soldiers. Children who carried messages through combat zones. Elderly humans who sabotaged our equipment. The entire population had become our enemy. By the 4th week, General Vexthul was demanding explanations for the delayed victory. Other military objectives were falling behind schedule because resources had to be diverted to the new Seattle siege. The humans were making the invasion far more expensive than anyone had anticipated. I reported that we needed significant reinforcements to complete the urban conquest, Kethver said. The general's response was to order accelerated operations. We were to finish the siege within days, using whatever methods necessary. But the humans had one more surprise waiting. As Zelthian forces prepared for their final assault, they discovered that their enemy had been using the siege for purposes beyond mere defense. Intelligence reports began indicating unusual activity. In other cities, Kethver told the judges, the humans had used the time we spent in New Seattle to prepare defenses elsewhere. Every day we fought in one city gave them more time to fortify 10 others. Kethver paused in his testimony, his forearms trembling slightly in their restraints. The judges waited patiently as he gathered himself to continue. We had fallen into a trap, he said finally. The humans had never intended to hold New Seattle indefinitely. They were teaching us to fight their kind of war, while learning everything. They could about ours. Cuthbert's voice carried a tone of reluctant admiration as he continued his testimony before the tribunal. The memories of what happened next still filled him with a mixture of fear and respect. The counterattack began on the 38th day of the invasion, he said. Until that moment, we believed we were winning despite the difficulties. The humans had been defending, retreating, buying time. We thought they were growing weaker. We were catastrophically wrong. The first sign of change came through intercepted human communications. Zelthian intelligence officers had been monitoring radio transmissions, trying to understand human coordination methods. What they discovered should have sent immediate warnings through the command structure. The humans had been deliberately revealing their communication frequencies, Kethver explained to the judges. For weeks, we thought we were successfully intercepting their military traffic. In reality, they were feeding us false information, while their real communications used methods we could not detect. General Sam Mitchell had been coordinating the human response from a location the Zelthians never found. While they wasted resources besieging cities and fighting defensive actions, Mitchell was organizing something unprecedented in galactic military history. The humans accomplished total species mobilization in less than 40 days, Kethver said. Every nation, every military force, every industrial facility was converted to support the war effort. They achieved unity that our intelligence said was impossible for their divided species. The counterattack struck simultaneously on 17 different fronts. Zelthian forces that had been advancing steadily suddenly found themselves surrounded by enemies that appeared from nowhere. Supply lines that had been secure for weeks were cut by coordinated strikes. Communication networks went silent as human cyber warfare specialists disabled Zelthian technology. Kethver's legion was advancing through the region humans called Oregon when the attack hit them. They had been pursuing scattered resistance groups, expecting to finish clearing the area within days. Instead, they walked into the most sophisticated military operation he had ever witnessed. Captain Grace Turner led the special operations team that infiltrated our rear positions, Kethver continued. We did not even know she was there until our command vehicles began exploding one by one. Her team had been following us for days, mapping our positions, identifying key targets. The attack came at dawn. Kethver woke to the sound of explosions throughout the encampment. Emergency alerts flooded the communication channels as Zelthian positions across the continent reported simultaneous assaults. This was not random guerrilla activity. This was coordinated military action on a scale that rivaled Zelthian operations. Lieutenant Chris Baker commanded their intelligence warfare division, Kethver said. Somehow they had broken our encryption protocols. They knew our deployment schedules, our supply routes, our tactical plans. Information that should have been impossible for them to access. The humans struck with precision that amazed even veteran Zelthian officers. They did not waste effort on irrelevant targets. Every attack hit critical systems, key personnel, essential equipment. They demonstrated understanding of Zelthian military doctrine that exceeded what many of his own officers possessed. More disturbing was their technology. The weapons firing at Zelthian positions were not the primitive devices described in intelligence reports. These were advanced systems that seemed specifically designed to counter Zelthian advantages. They were using our own technology against us, Kethver told. The tribunal. Equipment captured during earlier engagements had been reverse-engineered, improved, and mass-produced. Weapons that had taken Zelthian engineers decades to develop were being manufactured in human factories within weeks. The counterattack revealed the true scope of human preparation. While Zelthian forces had been focused on tactical victories, the humans had been building strategic advantages. Manufacturing facilities converted to weapon production. Transportation networks optimized for military logistics. Communication systems hardened against electronic warfare. Kethver's Legion found itself cut off from supply lines and reinforcements. Human forces had inserted themselves between Zelthian units, disrupting the careful coordination that made their military machine effective. For the first time in the campaign, Zelthian officers were operating without clear intelligence about enemy positions or capabilities. We attempted to re-establish contact with other legions, Kethver continued. What we discovered was that every major Zelthian force was facing similar situations. The humans had somehow coordinated attacks across thousands of kilometers simultaneously. The retreat began on the 42nd day. General Vexthul ordered all ground forces to withdraw to designated rally points, where they could regroup and assess the situation. It should have been an orderly tactical withdrawal. Instead, it became a running battle against enemies who seemed to anticipate every move. Human pursuit forces demonstrated mobility and coordination that defied explanation. They appeared ahead of retreating Zelthian columns, forcing them into unfavorable terrain. They struck at precise moments when defenses were weakest. They seemed to understand Zelthian tactical doctrine better than some Zelthian officers. My legion was forced to abandon most of our heavy equipment, Kethver admitted. The humans had learned to target our supply vehicles, our communication arrays, our medical facilities. They were not just trying to defeat us. They were trying to capture our technology intact. During the retreat, Kethver witnessed something that changed his understanding of human nature. His medical unit had been treating wounded Zelthian warriors when human forces overran their position. Standard military doctrine would have been to eliminate enemy wounded to prevent them from returning to combat. Instead, the humans provided medical care. Captain Troy Allen commanded the human unit that captured our field hospital, Kethver said. He ordered his medics to treat Zelthian wounded alongside their own casualties. When I demanded an explanation, he said that medical facilities were protected under human military law, regardless of whose wounded they contained. This behavior was unprecedented in Kethver's experience. Conquered species either fled in terror or fought with desperate fury. They did not demonstrate concern for enemy casualties. They did not follow rules of warfare that protected opponents. The humans were fighting according to principles we did not understand, he told the judges. They would attack our military targets with ruthless efficiency, then risk their own lives to rescue our wounded. They would destroy our equipment, then offer food and medical supplies to our prisoners. The retreat continued for days. Zelthian forces that had begun the invasion with overwhelming confidence now moved in constant fear of ambush. Human forces seemed to be everywhere, coordinating attacks with impossible precision. Lieutenant Chris Baker's intelligence operations had penetrated Zelthian communications so thoroughly that the humans often knew about Zelthian movements before the orders were distributed. They anticipated retreat routes, prepared ambush positions, coordinated pursuits across multiple units. We realized that our communication security had been compromised from the beginning, Kethver said. The humans had been monitoring our transmissions, learning our procedures. preparing countermeasures for weeks before revealing their capabilities. By the 50th day of the invasion, Zelthian ground forces controlled no significant territory. On Earth, human counterattacks had recaptured every major objective. More importantly, the humans had demonstrated military capabilities that exceeded Zelthian intelligence estimates by orders of magnitude. General Vexthul called an emergency conference of all surviving Legion commanders, Kethver continued. We met aboard the flagship, trying to understand what had gone wrong. The discussion lasted for hours, but the conclusion was unavoidable. We had underestimated the humans so completely that our invasion plan was worthless. Reports from other fronts painted the same picture. Human forces were not just resisting the invasion. They were winning. Zelthian technological advantages were being neutralized by superior tactics and coordination. Most disturbing of all, the humans were learning and adapting faster than Zelthian forces could respond. Admiral Peter Cross sent a communication to our fleet, Kethver said. He offered to negotiate terms for Zelthian withdrawal. Not surrender, withdrawal. He was treating us as equals rather than defeated enemies. The offer stunned the Zelthian command structure. In their experience, victorious forces demanded unconditional surrender. They did not offer negotiated settlements to invading armies. That was when I began to understand the true nature of human warfare, Kethver told the tribunal. They were not fighting for conquest or dominance. They were fighting for survival and protection. Once that goal was achieved, they were willing to show mercy. The counterattack had revealed humanity's greatest strength. Not their technology or tactics, but their ability to transform an entire species into a coordinated defense force while maintaining their moral principles. We had awakened something we did not understand, Kethver said quietly. The humans were not just another species to be conquered. They were something entirely new in our experience of warfare. Kethver took a deep breath as he approached the final chapter of his testimony. The judges of the tribunal leaned forward, knowing that his words would determine not just his fate, but the future of Zelthian relations with humanity. The withdrawal order came on the 57th day, he began. General Vexthul could no longer deny what every field commander already knew. The invasion had failed completely. Worse than failed. We were being systematically defeated by a species we had dismissed as primitive. The decision to retreat had not come easily to the Zelthian High Command. Their military doctrine had never included provisions for abandoning an invasion once it had begun. The very concept challenged fundamental assumptions about Zelthian superiority that had guided their empire for centuries. Admiral Peter Cross had continued sending diplomatic messages throughout the counterattack. His communications offered the Zelthian forces safe passage off Earth in exchange for complete withdrawal. No demands for reparations. No insistence on unconditional surrender. Simply an opportunity to leave without further bloodshed. The human offer confused our leadership, Kethver told the tribunal. According to our understanding of warfare, victorious forces dictate terms to defeated enemies. They do not negotiate with invaders. Yet the humans were treating us as if we deserved respect despite our obvious aggression. General Vexthul had initially rejected the human proposals, insisting that Zelthian forces could regroup and resume the offensive. But reports from every front told the same story. Human military capabilities continued to exceed all projections. Their coordination improved daily. Their technology advanced at impossible speeds. Intelligence estimates suggested that prolonged fighting would result in the complete destruction of our ground forces, Kethver continued. The humans were not just defeating us. They were learning from every engagement, becoming more effective with each battle. The final decision came after. Major Helen Davis transmitted detailed evidence of human military production capabilities. Somehow they had obtained comprehensive intelligence about Zelthian manufacturing, logistics, and reinforcement schedules. The data they provided proved that humanity could sustain the war indefinitely, while Zelthian resources were rapidly depleting. Major. Davis offered to share this intelligence as a gesture of good faith, Kethver explained. She wanted us to understand that continued fighting would only increase casualties on both sides, without changing the eventual outcome. Kethver's personal involvement in the withdrawal negotiations began when his legion was selected to coordinate the evacuation of Zelthian wounded. His medical facilities had been treating both human and Zelthian casualties since the counterattack began, making him an obvious choice for liaison duties. I met Captain Troy Allen at a field hospital near what the humans called Portland, he said. He was coordinating medical evacuations for mixed casualties. Human and Zelthian wounded were being treated side by side, receiving identical care regardless of species. The sight had shocked Kethver profoundly. Throughout Zelthian military history, wounded enemies were either abandoned or eliminated. The concept of providing medical care to defeated invaders was completely foreign to his understanding of warfare. Captain Allen explained that human military doctrine required medical personnel to treat all casualties according to need, not allegiance. Kethver continued. When I asked why they would help enemies who had invaded their world, he said that wounded beings were no longer enemies. They were patients. The evacuation process revealed the full scope of human organizational capabilities. They had established secure corridors for Zelthian withdrawal, coordinated transportation schedules, provided medical support, and even offered supplies for the journey back to Zelthian space. They were more efficient at organizing our retreat than we were, Kethver admitted to the judges. Human logistics officers worked alongside our staff to ensure smooth evacuation procedures. They seemed genuinely concerned about minimizing casualties during the withdrawal. During the final week of operations, Kethver was captured while leading a rear guard action to protect evacuating medical personnel. His transport had been damaged by equipment failure, not enemy action, and he had remained behind to coordinate rescue efforts for stranded Zelthian wounded. Human forces found him 12 hours later, unconscious from injuries sustained when his vehicle crashed. When he awakened, he was in a human medical facility receiving treatment from the same doctors who were caring for human casualties. Dr. Sarah Martinez was the human physician who treated my injuries, Kethver said. She explained that I had suffered internal damage that would have been fatal without immediate surgery. She and her team had spent 6 hours saving the life of an enemy commander. The experience of being a prisoner challenged every assumption Kethver had held about human nature. Instead of interrogation, threats, or punishment, he received medical care, decent food, and respectful treatment. Human guards spoke to him politely. Medical staff checked on his condition regularly. I asked Major Helen Davis why they were treating me so well, he continued. She said that how they treated enemies revealed who they were as a people. They chose to demonstrate their values through their actions, not just their words. During his recovery, Kethver was allowed to monitor communications between human and Zelthian forces. What he heard transformed his understanding of the entire conflict. The humans had been intercepting our military communications from the first day of the invasion, he told the tribunal. Not just tactical messages, but strategic planning, supply schedules, reinforcement timing, even personal communications between officers. The revelation explained everything that had puzzled him during the campaign. Human forces had anticipated Zelthian movements because they were listening to Zelthian plans. Their countermeasures had been so effective because they understood Zelthian capabilities better than many Zelthian commanders. Lieutenant Chris Baker showed me recordings of our pre-invasion briefings, Kethver continued. They had been monitoring our intelligence assessments, our tactical discussions, our confidence predictions. They knew exactly how much we had underestimated them. But the most shocking discovery was yet to come. The humans had not just been defending against the Zelthian invasion. They had been using it as an opportunity to study galactic military, technology, and tactics. Admiral Peter Cross revealed that human scientists had been analyzing captured Zelthian equipment from the first day. Kethver said, "They had reverse-engineered our weapons, improved our designs, and developed countermeasures for technologies we considered our greatest advantages." The humans had turned the invasion into a learning experience. Every battle had taught them something new about galactic warfare. Every captured device had advanced their technological capabilities. Every intercepted communication had improved their understanding of Zelthian military doctrine. They were not just fighting for survival, Kethver explained to the judges. They were preparing for future contact with galactic civilization. They used our invasion to accelerate their development by centuries. The final revelation came during his last conversation with Admiral Cross before being released. The human commander explained that Earth's defense had been coordinated by artificial intelligence systems that processed information faster than biological minds could comprehend. Their computers had analyzed every aspect of Zelthian military capability within the first week of invasion, Kethver said. They calculated optimal defensive strategies, predicted our tactical responses, and coordinated global resistance efforts with precision that exceeded our best planning algorithms. The humans had not defeated the Zelthian Empire through superior courage or better weapons. They had won through superior information processing, coordination, and adaptation. They had turned their entire planet into a learning system that improved faster than their enemies could respond. Before my release, Admiral Cross made an offer that still haunts me, Kethver told the tribunal. He said that humanity was interested in peaceful contact with galactic civilization. They wanted to share knowledge, trade resources, and learn about other species. The invasion had been unnecessary. The human commander had shown Kethver detailed plans for space exploration, scientific research, and diplomatic contact. Humanity had been developing these programs before the invasion began. They had wanted to join galactic society as partners, not conquerors. The humans fought so effectively because they were protecting something precious, Kethver said quietly. Not just their lives or their territory, but their future. They were defending their right to explore the galaxy peacefully. Kethver paused, looking directly at each judge in turn. The tribunal chamber was completely silent as he prepared to deliver his final testimony. "I have remained silent for 3 years because I knew my words would be difficult to believe," he said. "But this tribunal needs to understand the truth. We did not lose to a primitive species that got lucky. We lost to beings who represent something entirely new in galactic civilization." He took a deep breath before continuing. "The humans are not another conquest waiting to happen. They are teachers, innovators, and protectors who could transform our understanding of what civilization can become."